Welcome to NORRAG Podcast number 5. I am your host Paul, and today with my colleague Boroka, we will talk to Prof. Ji Liu about his article co-authored with Prof. Gita Steiner-Khamsi entitled Human Capital Index and the Hidden Penalty for Non-Participation in the International Large-Scale Assessments, ILSAs. The article is available on the NORRAG website at norrag.org in our news and blog sections. You can find NORRAG on social media, on Twitter at NORRAG, on Facebook at norrag.network. Ji Liu is a professor of comparative education and economics of education at the Tin Ka Ping School of Education, Shaanxi Normal University. He is also senior research associate at NORRAG. Gita Steiner-Khamsi is a professor of comparative and international education at Teachers College, Columbia University, and a professor at the Graduate Institute Geneva. She is also the director of NORRAG. I leave the floor now to Boroka for a discussion with the paper's lead author, Professor Ji Liu. Boroka, the floor is yours.
Dear Ji, first of all, thank you for accepting to speak in this podcast. Your study examines the World Bank's new Human Capital Index, a measure which aims to find new information about the future productivity of each country's workforce by synchronizing the ILSAs and regional test programming results. Can you please talk to us a little bit more about your research and your work for NORRAG?
Thank you, Boroka and Paul, for having me on the podcast. I am currently working as a senior research associate with NORRAG, primarily focus on running the NORRAG highlights and debates. On the side, I also help with ad hoc analytical reports and research for projects that come up. For instance, with the SDC backstopping team, and also more recently the GPEKIX project.
Could you please talk to us about why you decided to examine the reliability of the World Bank's new Human Capital Index?
First of all, there is a huge expansion in ILSA participation internationally. In 2018 alone, there were 75 countries and territories that participated in PISA. More than 600,000 students were mobilized and tested. In 2019, there were 60 countries that participated in the most recent TIMSS test. So again, there is a global increase in terms of the number of students tested and also the number of countries that are participating in such tests. In addition, there is also a proliferation of new ILSA-related products, especially testing products. So for instance, there is PISA for development, there is PISA for schools, and there is most recently PISA for babies or 5-year-olds. So what these means is that ILSA is expanding engagement with different levels of stakeholders, not only at the national level, but also now at the subnational level through PISA for schools. In the past, it has only been OECD countries that's taking part in PISA, but now it's expanded to non-member countries and also low and middle income countries. And PISA for baby, PISA for 5-year-olds, represents a new age group that PISA is engaging with. In the past, it's been 15-year-olds. Now, 5-year-olds are being tested. So under this backdrop, against this backdrop, there are two new developments, right, in this ILSA's global expansion movement, and we feel that it's worth examining. The first is there seems to be a preoccupation with linking test accountability to the global learning crisis, and secondly, there is a development of new technical tools that attempts to push countries to reconsider their ILSA participation decisions, especially for those countries that have been previously partial and non-participants. So Human Capital Index from the World Bank sits at sort of the epicenter of these two new developments. Firstly, Human Capital Index was devised as a direct response from the World Bank to address the learning crisis. Secondly, this new technical metric that the World Bank developed is in our study shown to penalize countries that have chosen alternative non-standardized pathways for measuring learning. So in the age of ILSA expansion, it is our worry that these new developments will bring about a surplus of assessment that students are increasingly participating in, countries administering and sponsoring, but the predominant policy advice have remained singular, that countries must measure learning, must adopt testing, and intervene in education policies with a list of pre-subscribed policy interventions in order, again, this is a very new development, not to only improve education quality and learning, but also to address and improve the future productivity of workers.
Thank you very much. And what do your findings tell us about the limitations of the World Bank Human Capital Index?
It comes in two areas where we discuss the perils of the World Bank's Human Capital Index. The first is that we show that we're not the first ones to show that the Human Capital Index, which is based on ILSA results, is incomparable across different test programs. We show, we summarize the literature on this, and we find primarily 4 reasons why ILSAs are not comparable. So on the first cluster of studies, scholars, find that ILSAs and regional assessments are run by very different testing agencies, and they vary very much in objective, domain, and design. So we see that there are 2 different clusters of test programs. The first being competency skills-based, such as PISA and PEARLS, and another cluster of programs that are more closely aligned with curriculum, and that's TIMSS and SECMAC. So these test objectives differences will translate into very different test outcomes. Secondly, participating countries' target population and sampling approach vary drastically across different programs. So I'll address this a little bit more when I discuss the empirical findings, but there are many, scholars that identify the differences in terms of how sampling approaches differ by test program. Thirdly, it is very worrying that ILSAs do not isolate the influence on non-school factors. It takes school factors and non-school factors as a whole and evaluate that in terms of student test scores. There are many studies that show the underlying family, cultural, and measurement related issues are, hold large influence on test scores, on the differences, on the variations in test scores. Fourthly, there are also considerable differences in terms of measurement technology, testing technology. For one, there is a mode effect that's been shown between computer-based and paper-based testing, and PISA and TIMSS are, not sort of unanimous in terms of whether they are using computer-based or they're using paper-based. So on the empirical side, we sort of directly test sort of some of these arguments. For one, we show that the test overlap and non-overlap countries are very, very different. In the regional SECMAC case, we show that Botswana, which is the only test overlap country that is used in the World Bank's Human Capital Index calculation exercise between SECMAC and TIMSS, this test overlap country, Botswana, is twice as wealthy in terms of per capita GDP and provides one additional year of formal primary education on average to its citizens. So this raises a lot of question regarding how comparable are the participants who participate in regional tests and those that participate in ILSAs at the country level. Secondly, we also document, the large sampling differences that occur within the same within the same country for the same test year. We show that there are huge discrepancies in terms of target population coverage. For instance, in Lebanon and Buenos Aires, which took part in both PISA 2015 and TIMSS 2015. They on average exhibit a difference in terms of target population coverage, between 30 to 40%. And also, this sampling difference translates into very different student characteristics when you look at the average students that takes these tests. So in Georgia and in Jordan, which both took part in PISA and TIMSS 2015, they have a 2-year difference in terms of the sample mean age between PISA and TIMSS, with PISA at 15.9 years old and TIMSS only at 13.7 years old. So these sampling differences doesn't just end there, but they translate into this formula that the bank uses, which relies heavily on the inter-test exchange rate. We show, on our empirical analysis that this inter-test exchange rate is highly volatile, depending which countries are considered test overlap. Through our predictions, we see that for an average country scoring at 500 points, the volatility in terms of the inter-test exchange rate will translate into as much as a 70-point difference. So this is quite considerable.
Thank you. And in your article, you suggest that the new Human Capital Index may penalise governments that have chosen alternative, non-standardised paths for measuring learning outcomes of students, and that this has contributed to a rise in the participation in the ILSAs and test-based accountability reform. Can you explain to us why this is the case?
So what we've tried to show in the final empirical section of our study is that test type alone explains 58% of the variation in the HLO scores that the bank calculates. So it is especially troubling also to see that the majority of these partial and non-participants in ILSA are those from low and lower middle income countries. We control for a wide variety of variables, including test year, region fixed effects, income level, and this score penalty continues to show up. At one point, it equates to at least 1 full year of learning. So this penalty that's generated simply because of the methodology used to compute the human capital index creates an incentive for realignment, right? For countries to reconsider their decisions on whether to participate in ILSA, regional test programs, or simply not participate at all. So this has huge implications for the world moving forward, because the bank is pushing for using the Human Capital Index as a measure in its assessment and reassessment of loans. So, for instance, in the new regional human capital plan for Africa, the Human Capital Index is cited heavily, and it is used to justify new sort of aid projects that's happening across Africa, laying out the aims for the next couple years in terms of development objectives. In addition, country briefs and reports, for instance, like the Pakistan at 100 shaping the future and the future drivers of growth in Rwanda, these country briefs and reports are also citing human capital index heavily. And this represents a broader sort of issue, thinking about harmonizing different ILSA programs, at the same time pushing countries to reconsider their decisions to participate or not participate in ILSAs, and also change or transform the meaning for education. Through Human Capital Index, the World Bank is pushing for a renewed interest, but at the same time also shifting the axis of the meaning of education from access in the EFA era to learning in the ILSA years, and now to a new link with worker productivity. So this is what we try to summarize and discuss in our paper that examines the Human Capital Index.
Thank you, Ji, for chatting to Boroka and I about your research. And once again, thank you, Boroka, for leading the discussion. In this time during which our listeners might be working from home due to the COVID-19 pandemic, NORRAG wishes to bring you content which is relevant to your work and interests, and which you can enjoy from the comfort of your homes. We hope you stay safe and look forward to seeing you next time on the NORRAG Podcast, your podcast on global development in education policies and practice.